In this video, I'm going to beat Honor Mode in Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm going to do it by literally just walking. This is the most absurd strategy imaginable because it doesn't rely on fancy spells or devastating attacks. No, we're simply going to leisurely stroll our way to victory. And this cheesy strategy is so ridiculous that it actually helped me stumble upon a fun new exploit that can deal infinite damage to 99.9% of the enemies in the game, all in the first round of combat before they can even take a turn, by literally just walking. This adventure begins where every adventure begins: character creation. My only real goal right now is to level up without getting into combat, so I'm starting as a wizard named Thunderclap Jack. I don't have a way to weaponize my movement speed on the Nautiloid ship, so my only choice was to run past everything, and I woke up on the beach and it's time to assemble my squad of misfits. I recruited Shadowheart first, then made my way over to Astarion before heading out. I have no intention whatsoever of helping the Druid Grove with their problems, but I guess it was nice of them to distract the goblins for me so I could sneak by unnoticed. Now, Thunderclap Jack isn't just good at long walks on the beach, he's also a master of disguise. I took on the appearance of a drow and talked my way past all the goblin ambushes in the area to gain experience and also find my first important item of the run, the Haste Helm. It gives me momentum at the start of combat, which increases my movement speed, and speed is gonna be the name of the game for this playthrough. Upon reaching level 2, I multi-classed as a cleric with Elistray as my deity, and I also let Priestess Gut barbecue my palm. A very painful but necessary sacrifice that will allow me to talk my way through the goblin encounter at the Blighted Village Windmill and reach level 3. The next step of Thunderclap Jack's master plan is to acquire Crusher's Ring, which he wears on his foot.
Kiss the damn foot.
And who better for the job than literally anybody but me? I don't want to touch that. I'll let Astarion lick the goblin's foot. He's probably got experience with this sort of thing anyway.
Impressive, though I'm not sure I want to know why you're so skilled at that.
And Crusher's Ring increases my movement speed by 10 more feet per turn, making my leisurely stroll more into a light jog. As a wizard, I can enhance my leap distance and cast Featherfall so I don't take fall damage, so it lets me get around the Underdark with ease. I jumped over a chasm and made a beeline for Fowler Alluve, and my hand suffered yet more trauma as I shed some blood and retrieved the sword. I may not have proficiency in wielding this weapon type yet, but it won't be long before this sword is going to help me dance my enemies to death. After a bit of lazy pathing, I found myself just outside the Myconid village, completely befuddled by Timisk spores. My excuse is that the pain in my barbecued and bloodied hand was distracting me from my surroundings. Fortunately, I can barely notice the pain in my hand now that the majority of my body is covered in 3rd-degree torchstalk burns. After this encounter, I thought that I had had enough of Timisk spores for a lifetime until Omalum gave me a quest to go get some more, and now I guess I'm going to drink them. Seems like a bad idea in hindsight, but I'm suffering from some pretty severe head trauma at the moment, so I said, sure, why not? Let's do it. I collected all the necessary ingredients at the Arcane Tower and returned to Omalum, but was having second thoughts about drinking this stuff, so I drank some liquid courage, also known as an elixir of heroism. Now I'm ready to slurp up some Timisk spores mixed with Tongue of Madness. What could possibly go wrong? But I'd passed all of the saving throws, no problem. In truth, none of this matters though. All I really needed was to unlock Omalum's merchant stock, because the key to weaponizing my movement speed is the Boots of Stormy Clamor. I've used these boots before, but anything I've used them for was child's play compared to what I'm going to accomplish in this video. I did a quick respec to Thief Rogue, and it's time to get out of here. I've collected everything I need from the Underdark, so I'm going to reward myself with a vacation, ideally somewhere warm enough that mushrooms can't survive. Okay, this was a little warmer than I was hoping for, and a lot less vacation than I was led to believe, but I guess I will have to jump my way over some lava and get to this chest, because inside the chest is an item that I will need. I sent it over to Astarion, freshly respec'd as a bard, and he's got the spell Knock, which can open this thing up no problem. Inside the chest is the Sentient Amulet, which is the final ingredient I need to turn my passion for power walking into a weapon of mass destruction. Before the killing starts though, I decided to hit level 4 by chatting chatting with the Githyanki Patrol and the Zentarim to gain some experience from both. I leveled up to 4 as a rogue and took the alert feat so that I always get the first turn in combat. It is now time for the killing to begin, and my first choice of target is clear because he's carrying some loot that I want. Sergeant Thrin in the Underdark. Before the fight, I had Shadowheart cast Sanctuary onto Thunderclap Jack because it is just hilariously overpowered with this strategy, and then I told Sergeant Thrin that he's about to die. As expected, I get to make the first move in combat, and my first action point is used to activate Faller Aluve's Shriek ability. This causes all enemies within a 20-foot range to take an extra 1 to 4 thunder damage whenever they get hit. It also debuffs their saving throws, but the most important thing about this ability is that when I walk close enough to an enemy, it counts as applying a condition. Well, whenever I apply a condition to an enemy, my Boots of Stormy Clamor inflict 2 stacks of reverberation onto them, and when they have 5 or more stacks, they'll take thunder damage and possibly fall prone. Under normal circumstances, the game will only let me apply reverberation 1 time per turn with Faller Aluve's Shriek aura, but this limit gets reset anytime I use an ability, and my Sentient Amulet has an ability that doesn't have a cost. This ability, Talk to Sentient Amulet, is the key to slaughtering my enemies by walking back and forth. All I have to do is walk near an enemy and tag them with my Shrieking Sword aura, giving them 2 stacks of reverberation. Then I can walk out of range and try to talk to my Sentient Amulet. It doesn't work in combat, and my character's gonna say something annoying every time.
Little busy. Let's focus on surviving first. Now is not the time.
But then I can walk back towards the enemy and give them more stacks of reverberation. I can use all of my movement speed to walk back and forth, each time adding more and more stacks of reverberation and eventually damaging my enemy. They'll take up to 4 thunder damage from reverberation and up to 4 more from my Shrieking Sword. My movement speed has officially been weaponized, and the faster I go, the more damage I can deal. And the best part is that this is barely even scratching the surface of how overpowered this strategy is going to get. Remember, I promised infinite damage, and I intend to deliver on that promise. One of the most absurd things about this cheesy strategy is that it doesn't even break the Sanctuary spell, so while my character vibrates back and forth at a rate so fast the sound waves are ripping my enemies to shreds, they're almost completely powerless to fight back. They can try to hit me with an area of effect ability, but any direct attacks are completely prevented by the Sanctuary spell. But also keep in mind that I only have 5 turns from my Shrieking Sword, and if I don't manage to kill everybody by the end of 5 turns, I'll be left completely powerless until my next short rest, which will recharge Faller Aluve's Shriek ability. Once I finished killing Sergeant Thrin, I looted the Ring of Absolute Force from his body, which adds 1 to any thunder damage I deal, and with this ring, my damage range per hit is between 3 and 9 damage every time I fully stack reverberation. The rest of the enemies here have absolutely no value to me, dead or alive, so I decided to just save time, and I didn't even bother fighting them, I just headed out. I'm level 4 right now, and I am headed straight into Act 2, an area that would be bitterly difficult for a party of my level under normal circumstances. But this build is about as far from normal circumstances as you can get. My first stop in Act 2 was Last Light Inn, where Shadowheart nearly got ripped apart by a bunch of crawling claws. I was on my way to save her when I assumed Jaheira used Ice Storm and wiped the majority of them out. There's actually nothing I need from Last Light Inn, so I left with Moonrise Towers as my new destination. I don't have a moon lantern, so I made my way through the Shadow Curse as quickly as possible so that it wouldn't rip me to pieces. Then I grabbed the waypoint at Moonrise Towers and reunited my party, but there's still just the 3 of us. It's time for me to recruit my 4th party member, which is of course going to be Minthara. She's in a bit of a bind right now and needs a hero to walk into her life and save her, and Thunderclap Jack is just the man for the job. Well, things didn't quite go according to plan because Thunderclap Jack got a little confused about what his objective was, and I honestly might have been in a lot more danger if not for the fact that my enemy fell prone while walking through my aura on the way to the door. I didn't plan for this to happen, I just got lucky and they had 4 stacks of reverberation on them after I finished my turn. I'll never say no to a bit of sheer dumb luck, especially in an honor mode run. Once we finished them all off, I recruited Minthara to the party because I intend to use her soul branding ability to increase my movement speed even more. I've been doing doing a lot of things the lazy way, and that didn't stop here. I had Minthara drink an invisibility potion and just follow us out, but she failed the saving throw against a scrying eye by literally just 1. I had to convince everybody that her mind had been wiped clean, and somehow that worked. Minthara has officially joined the party. Apparently Minthara's minimum level is 6, so even though my party was still level 4, I was able to respec her as a barbarian and choose Aspect of the Elk at level 6, which increases my movement speed by another 5. It's just an aura around her that increases all party members' movement speed. Now, I really want to skip as many combat encounters as possible in Act 2, mostly to save my wrist from having to click back and forth, so I broke into Ketheric Thorm's room to find something that I'll need for later. His undead dog was in here, so I entered combat and used a series of intense sidesteps to completely end its existence. Then I grabbed a letter to Ketheric from Melodia in the chest at the foot of his bed, and I read it, so now I can convince Ketheric to kill himself later in Act 2. The Thorms are particularly vulnerable to being convinced to kill themselves, so to gain some quick experience, I went and convinced all the other Thorms to kill themselves as well. Despite only being level 4 when I started, it really wasn't any trouble and brought me up to level 5. Now, it was actually time for me to make some dinner in real life, so first I popped down into the Gauntlet of Shar and started a battle between Balthazar and Shar's Dark Justiciars. Balthazar loses this fight, but it takes a really long time, so I just popped in every so often to end a turn until combat was over. There were a few Justiciars left alive at the end, so I wiggled around like a madman until they had all perished, and then in the treasure room behind this door, I received another incredibly important item, the Callous Glow Ring. I didn't actually know if this was going to work, and I decided to test it at the Githyanki Creche because there was another item there that I wanted to test, the Gloves of Belligerent Skies. The Callous Glow Ring adds 2 radiant damage to any target that is illuminated, and to my surprise, this worked with my walking build. The Gloves of Belligerent Skies did not work, but still, it's a huge win to be able to deal an extra 2 damage per hit. I did a handful of other fights or activities at this point, and there were reasons why I did them at the time, but none of them ended up being relevant, so I'll just save time in the video by saying I ran around slaughtering various enemies to gain experience, and while I was killing all of these random enemies, I did notice a brand new exploit that is going to be a game changer for this build. I don't know how I would have ever found something like this if I wasn't using the dumbest playstyle in existence, but I'll explain how this works during the fight against the Apostle of Merkel, since that's where it's going to have the biggest impact. That said, see if you can spot it before we get to there. I've never encouraged Shadowheart to become a Dark Justiciar before, so I decided to let her kill Dame Aelin without really thinking about it, and as a result, I completely doomed everybody at Last Light Inn. I had gone through a lot of trouble to save the Iron Hand gnomes in Moonrise Prison, and now all of that effort has been wasted. Oh well, it happens. Even the great Thunderclap Jack makes mistakes. With all the Harpers dead though, Moonrise Towers doesn't look like a battlefield when I arrive to kill Ketheric. Everything is nice and tidy with Zarel and some soldiers waiting for me at the foot of the tower. I politely asked her to stand aside, and her response showed how little she understood about her situation.
How funny. How sad. You think you're going to survive this, don't you?
I've made it up to level 6 by this point, so I'm kind of a big deal. Check this out. I put 2 points into Fighter so I can activate my Sword Shriek, then Action Surge and dash 3 times. That's a lot of movement speed that Zarel is about to be on the receiving end of. In Dungeons & Dragons, 1 combat round is 6 seconds long, so to add to the realism of this fight, I thought it might be fun to speed the video up to match the approximate duration that this fight would have taken. See you in 6 seconds. Whew, I am working up a sweat with all of this walking. I didn't really feel like doing all the clicking necessary to kill my way through the tower, so I climbed up on the balcony and only had 1 fight between me and Ketheric. You know what? I'll go ahead and play this one out in realism mode as well. Alrighty, so there's clearly nobody that can handle the power of my ability to walk back and forth incredibly fast, but maybe Ketheric Thorm will surprise me. Before the battle, I tried to convince him to surrender. This doesn't do anything for me now, but it does let me skip phase 1 of the fight the next time I see him. Once the fight was underway, I started thunderclapping my enemies. I brought Minthara upstairs so that I could still benefit from her movement speed aura, but Astarion and Shadowheart just aren't needed at all for this fight. Ketheric has some damage reduction, which made this fight take take a really long time, but even with his damage reduction, he didn't get to move or even take a turn in combat before he ran away from battle with his tail between his legs. Pathetic. Naturally, I chased him down into the Mind Flayer colony, where I spoke with him again, and this time when I convinced him to surrender, he just decided to kill himself and become the Apostle of Merkel. Once again, I made sure that Minthara was standing in the perfect position to provide me with her aura, and now I'll explain what's been going on while I kill this boss in just one turn. Minthara's aura aspect of the elk is giving me 5 movement speed, but I've positioned her perfectly so that I am right at the very edge of the aura. Every time I gain the aura, it gives me 5 extra movement speed plus another 5 movement speed for every dash I've done this turn. This allows me to actually gain movement speed each turn rather than lose it. In other words, I have infinite movement speed by running in and out of her aura, and since this build converts movement speed into damage, I now have infinite damage. The Apostle of Merkel doesn't even get to take a single turn in combat because my turn never ends. At this point, I wouldn't even blame you for thinking, okay, so this is the ultimate form of your walking playstyle. After all, it's hard to beat infinite damage, right? But I'm here to tell you that this is not my ultimate form. There's still room to make one massive game-changing improvement, but I'll need some items in Act 3 to finish my masterpiece. The Apostle of Merkel finally fell, and I headed straight for Act 3. I have to make a quick stop in the astral plane to save the Emperor, which actually did end up taking 2 turns. I killed 3 of the Githyanki attackers in turn 1, but I ran out of movement speed, and since Minthara is also in combat and also out of movement speed, I can't reposition her to be at the perfect distance. The Emperor saw my great overwhelming power and felt the need to show off himself, using Chain Lightning as his only action in this fight. Honestly, not bad, but completely pathetic compared to the thundering that is my walk. Just before Act 3, I started up a quick romance with Minthara because I'll probably want somebody to rule the world with when I finish thunderstepping Act 3's entire existence.
I belong only to you.
The first thing I did in Act 3 was get thrown in jail for being a violent murderer.
You will be transferred to Worms Rock Prison.
Joke's on them, this is exactly where I want to be. I unlocked my cell with knock, which caused guards to swarm over to check it out, and I snuck out while the door was open to re-equip Fowler Eluve just in time for a battle to break out. The guards never even knew what hit them. They were dead in less than 6 seconds. I chugged an elixir of vigilance that I bought from Popper over at the circus, and I started a battle with Gortash. The game really tried to discourage me from this fight.
Doubt casts a shadow on your mind. You've little chance to best Gortash's steel watchers.
But it just doesn't understand my overwhelming power. Well, maybe it does, because Gortash gets full thunder immunity in this fight. I can't touch him. It was a very painful and long process, but I managed to finally lure Gortash away from all of his defensive mechanisms, and I finally had an opportunity to deal damage to him. I didn't waste my shot, of course. I killed him in just 1 turn before chugging a potion of flying and zooming off the balcony. Absolutely no way am I wasting half an hour killing all of these Steel Watchers. No, I'm headed straight for Orin, which means stopping at the murder tribunal first. I got the passcode for the door out of some idiot's pocket, and when I stood before the murder tribunal, I presented Gortash's hand and didn't even need to make an ability check. Then I murdered the most annoying flying elephant in the world and became an unholy assassin. This is where my build acquires the item it needs to reach its ultimate form, the Ballist Armor. This armor has the Aura of Murder, which is a condition that can trigger my Boots of Stormy Clamor. However, it has the advantage over my Shrieking Sword because this aura can be toggled on and off. How about we go fight Orin and let's see how it works in action. I bound my Sentient Amulet to the number 3 on my keyboard, and I can toggle my armor aura with the number 4. So here's the method that I'm going to use to kill Orin. First, stand next to Orin. Then I press 4 twice and I press 3 once. These button presses toggle my armor on and off, and then reset my ability to apply reverberation by trying to talk to my Sentient Amulet. And I can just repeat these button presses over and over again until the fight is over.
That can wait. Let's focus on surviving.
My ultimate form has been unlocked. I can now use my Deathwalker abilities to kill enemies and completely skip the walking part, because honestly, my wrist was getting kind of tired from all that clicking. Once Orin was dead, I realized I didn't really feel like killing the rest of her soldiers, so I tried to run away, but I ran out of movement speed. Lucky for me, Minthara is here, and she can just walk back and forth to tag me with Aspect of the Elk aura over and over again until my movement speed is all charged up, maxed out again, and I can just walk right out of here. There is literally nothing that can stop me now, so I skip right ahead to the Nether Brain, and I wanted to sneak to the brain invisibly and skip this fight, but something went wrong and I lost my invisibility. This is honor mode, there's no going back, so I just ran around thunderclapping everything to death. I even dealt a few points of damage to the dragon just to prove that it could, but for some reason my stand still strategy wasn't working against it, and I actually had to run back and forth, and the dragon reduces all damage taken by 4, which would have made this take a really long time, and I'm just not interested in dealing with it. I killed literally everything else though, all in the first round of combat, and I started the channel to open the portal and I headed to the Nether Brain. I stood perfectly still next to the brain, hitting 443, 443, 443 on my keyboard until I had won the game.
Surviving first. That can wait.
Knowing that Minthara wanted to rule the world with me, I betrayed the Emperor in the final moment so that I could become the Absolute. Astarion objected,
What in all the sweet hells are you doing?
so I reassured him by letting him know he's still part of my design.
You are glorious, my love. You have never been more beautiful.
So there you have it. You don't need powerful magic or attacks to beat Baldur's Gate 3, just the right pair of boots. The kind of boots that were made for walking. And that's just what they did.